SNK, which stands for Shin Nihon Kikaku and translates to New Japan Project, are a Japanese video game company founded in 1978 by Akichi Kawasaki. Their first release, Ozma Wars, was an arcade vertical space shooter released in 1979 and saw moderate success. They released Vanguard in 1981, a side-scrolling space shooter that fared even better, being ported to the Atari 2600 and being the 21st best-selling Atari game of all time. It would be the first video game to have a continue option. In 1986, SNK would put out Athena, a cutesy platformer where you control a titular headstrong princess, one of the first ever games where you get to control a female protagonist. Athena would get the sequel Psycho Soldier in 1987, a platformer run-and-gun hybrid where you control a distant relative, also named Athena. Also in 1986, SNK would hit massive with Ikari Warriors, a vertical run-and-gun where you control commandos trying to free the captive Colonel Cook. Ikari Warriors will be lauded for its cooperative gameplay and its innovative rotary joysticks. The game would make SNK a worldwide name, with great success in the US and Europe. In 1990, SNK would release their most innovative arcade system, or systems, should I say. The Neo Geo MVS, or multi-video system, would be an arcade cabinet that allowed multiple video games to be played. You would just choose on the screen. They put out versions that contain from 2, 4, 6, and 8 games. It's initially packed with 4 titles: Magician Lord, a fantasy-themed side-scrolling action platformer; Nam 1975, a gallery shooter set during the Vietnam War; Baseball Stars Professional, a baseball sports title; and Top Players Golf, a colourful golf game. This new approach to having multiple games in an arcade cabinet proved successful for them, with arcade owners being able to swap out these games whenever they pleased, saving on space in their establishment. SNK knew true success was in the home console market, so alongside their Neo Geo arcade cabinet, they also released the Neo Geo AES, or the Advanced Entertainment System. This console was initially only meant for rental and use in hotels, but they quickly started selling them in stores due to high demand. Released on April 26, 1990, the Neo Geo AES would retail at $649.99, which was roughly $1,500 in today's money, and would be the most expensive games console on the market. Its USP will be that it used the same tech as its arcade namesake, and so could produce the exact same graphical and sound output, although the cartridges between the systems were interchangeable due to the size difference. Instead of a regular controller, the system would be bundled with an arcade stick for controls that included 4 buttons. If there's a gaming genre that would be undeniably forever linked with SNK, then it's got to be fighting games. On November 25th, 1991, SNK would release their most recognisable IP. Fatal Fury King of Fighters is a one-on-one fighting game where you get to play as one of 3 fighters. The game would be highly successful and would have sequels released throughout the 90s and the early 2000s, the most recent being in 2025. SNK would also create several more successful fighting series, such as The Art of Fighting from 1992, a fighting game that, despite only having 2 playable characters, was highly successful and would popularise features such as a compelling narrative and desperation moves, as well as several more innovations. Samurai Showdown in 1993, a weapons-based fighting game that took place during feudal Japan and would popularise the use of weapons in fighting games. The series would get many sequels during the 90s and the 2000s. The King of Fighters 94, probably SNK's biggest IP after Fatal Fury. The King of Fighters is a fighting game whose roster was a combination of SNK's most beloved mascots. It included characters from Fatal Fury such as Terry and Andy Bogard, Ryo Sakazaki and Robert Garcia from The Art of Fighting, Ralph Jones and Clark Steele from Ikari Warriors, and Athena from Psycho Soldiers, as well as some new creations. The game would popularise the team battle feature, as well as the fighting game crossover. On September 9th, 1994, SNK would release their CD system, the Neo Geo CD. Companies such as Sega and Philips had already put CD systems out on the market, and since CDs were the new way of storing video game data and at a cheaper cost, they thought this would be the way to get on top. The Neo Geo CD would retail at $399, which is roughly $900 in today's money. It didn't actually have any graphical or processing edge on its predecessors, and the loading time for the games had actually gotten worse, so initial reviews weren't great. The system would be discontinued in 1997 after poorer than expected sales and being bullied out the market by the PlayStation and the N64. In September 1997, SNK would release the Hyper Neo Geo 64. This was an arcade board that was going to rival the PlayStation and Nintendo 64, except it didn't. It was the company's chance to enter the 3D market and stay relevant, but the PlayStation had already been out for nearly 3 years and really had its claws in the market. The system only had 7 games developed for it, none of which were received well. Not to mention the Hyper Neo Geo was only released in arcade form and didn't quite make it to the console market like the Neo Geo. The system was a massive failure commercially. It was discontinued in 1999 and SNK went back to developing games for their Neo Geo system. In October 1998, SNK would throw their hat into the handheld console market and release the Neo Geo Pocket. It was a monochrome system and would have 8 launch titles, including Baseball Stars and the King of Fighters R1. Since Nintendo owned the handheld market with the Game Boy, SNK was hoping the Pocket would appeal to a slightly different audience. It saw a limited release in Japan and Hong Kong only, and had just as limited commercial success. Just 5 months after, in 1999, SNK would put out the Neo Geo Pocket Color. This new version of the Pocket would be fully colour, have a slimmer form factor, and an improved battery life. This time, they would release in the US and Europe, and would be priced at $69.95 on release. By 2000, the system held a modest share of 2% of the American handheld market. Not overly impressive, but enough for SNK to turn a profit. SNK had had financial trouble in 2000, and the acquisition by Aruze was the final nail in the coffin for the Pocket, since they shifted their focus from video games to pachinko machines. Come the late 90s, arcades were waning in popularity, and so was SNK. The company was in financial trouble, and so was acquired by the company Aruze, a pachinko company. Instead of continuing to create video games, Aruze would develop pachinko machines with SNK IPs, such as King of Fighters. On October 30th, 2001, SNK declared bankruptcy, since it was in financial dire straits and was unable to carry on. That same year, Ikichi Kawasaki would create the Playmore Corporation, and would win the intellectual property rights of SNK in a bid. To re-establish its presence in the gaming market, Playmore acquired Brezasoft and its former SNK developers, as well as Japan-based Neo Geo developer Noise Factory. In July 2003, with the consent of SNK founder Ikichi Kawasaki, the company changed its name to SNK Playmore Corporation. Over the next 20 years, SNK Playmore Corporation will go through many name changes and will develop several games for companies like Sony, Xbox, and Nintendo. I think SNK's greatest strength turned out to be its downfall. The ability to put out arcade-level games in the home market was great for the early 90s, but come the mid-90s, gamers were being enticed by genres such as first-person shooters, action-adventures, RPGs, and real-time strategies that SNK had no plans to make. I feel they had so much more to offer the games console world, and could have been a major contender to the likes of Nintendo, Sega, and Sony if they'd just had some vision and made some better marketing choices. Their reluctance to leave the arcade market behind was ultimately their downfall. That being said, their contribution to the fighting and run-and-gun genres couldn't be rivaled in the 90s. Now, I say downfall, but SNK never really went away, and they've even jumped onto the mini classic console bandwagon recently with the Neo Geo Plus. I hope it does well, and we see some more of SNK in the future. I've been the Stock Retro Gamer, and I'll see you in the next one.